Before we begin, make sure you're somewhere quiet. Turn off the lights. Put on your headphones. These are the kinds of experiences people don't talk about. The moments that happen late at night, when help is far away, and no one believes you. If you enjoy true horror stories, unsettling encounters, and disturbing events that happen to real people, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's begin. I've lived in Alaska most of my life, and if there's one thing people from the lower 48 don't understand, it's this. Alaska doesn't feel empty. It feels watched. This happened in January of 2016, during one of the coldest winters we'd had in years. I was 27 at the time, working seasonal maintenance jobs, plumbing, heating, generator repair, mostly for remote cabins that were unoccupied during winter. That word matters later. I got a call from a man named Gerald who owned a hunting cabin about 40 miles outside Fairbanks. He said his satellite thermostat hadn't pinged in days. In Alaska, that's dangerous. If the heat goes out, pipes freeze, walls crack, and the whole place can become unlivable within hours. He insisted the cabin was empty. No one's there, he said. Keys are under the porch plank like always. I didn't love the idea. The road to the cabin was barely maintained, and daylight in January is a joke, maybe 4 hours if you're lucky. But the pay was good, and I'd done worse. So I loaded my truck with tools, extra fuel, a rifle, standard out here, and headed out before dawn. The drive itself was eerie. Snow swallowed the road markers, trees leaned inward like they were closing ranks, and my radio kept cutting in and out with bursts of static. No stations. Just noise. About 30 miles in, I noticed something that immediately put me on edge. Fresh tire tracks. Not snow machine tracks. Not animal trails. Truck tires. They were heading the same direction I was. That bothered me because Gerald had told me no one had been out there in weeks. And in weather like this, tracks don't last long unless they're recent. I told myself maybe a ranger or another contractor had passed through. I shouldn't have. By the time I reached the cabin, it was already getting dark. The place sat alone in a clearing, surrounded by dense spruce trees, snow piled halfway up the walls. Smoke wasn't coming from the chimney. Good sign, I thought. Means no one's inside. Then I noticed the front door. It wasn't snowed in. The porch had been cleared. Not perfectly, but enough to show someone had been there recently. I walked around the cabin slowly, rifle slung over my shoulder, boots crunching loudly in the frozen snow. No footprints. At least, not obvious ones. The back door was locked. Windows were dark. No movement. I found the key where Gerald said it would be and unlocked the front door. The smell hit me first. Not rot. Not animals. Something warmer. Like cooked food that had gone cold. I stepped inside and immediately felt wrong about being there. The cabin was cold, but not as cold as it should have been if the heat had been off for days. My breath fogged, but faintly. I checked the thermostat. It was set to 62. And it was on. That shouldn't have been possible. I told myself maybe the satellite glitch caused a false alarm. But then I noticed something else. A chair had been pulled close to the fireplace. Not randomly. Deliberately. Facing the door. Like someone had been sitting there, waiting. I moved deeper inside, every instinct screaming at me to leave, but work brain kept pushing forward. That's when I heard it. A sound from the back bedroom. A soft scrape. Like something heavy being dragged slowly across wood. I froze. Hello? I called out. No answer. The sound stopped. Silence pressed in so hard it felt physical. I took a step forward, then another. The bedroom door was cracked open. Inside, the room was empty, but the bed was disturbed. Sheets wrinkled. An impression like someone had recently been lying there. Then I noticed the closet. The door was open. Inside were coats. Not Gerald's hunting jackets. Different sizes. Different styles. Some old. Some newer. And they all smelled like sweat. That's when I heard breathing. Not in the room. Behind me. Slow. Controlled. Too close. I spun around, rifle up. Nothing. The living room was empty. But the chair by the fireplace had moved. Just slightly. Angled toward the hallway. I didn't stay any longer. I grabbed my tools, backed out of the cabin, and locked the door. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the key twice trying to put it back. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Footprints. They weren't leading away from the cabin. They circled it. Over and over. Like someone had been pacing while I was inside. I got in my truck and started it immediately. As my headlight swept across the tree line, I saw a shape. Tall. Too tall. Standing just inside the trees. Not moving. Just watching. I drove. I didn't stop until I hit the main road. That night, I called Gerald and told him everything. There was a long pause on the line. Then he said quietly, "That's impossible." "Why?" I asked. "Because," he said, "that cabin burned down in 2009. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He sent me photos. Charred remains. Fire reports. Insurance documents. The cabin I'd been inside shouldn't have existed. And yet, 2 weeks later, a search team found something in that clearing. A shallow grave. 3 bodies. Frozen solid. No records. No IDs. And one detail that still makes my blood run cold. One of them was wearing a jacket with my company logo on it. I quit that job. I don't go near remote cabins anymore. And sometimes, on especially quiet nights, I swear I can still hear breathing behind me. I grew up in Alaska, but people who haven't lived there don't understand what that really means. Alaska isn't just cold. It's empty. There are places where the nearest town is hours away, where roads disappear into white nothingness, and where cell service doesn't exist, not because it's spotty, but because there's simply no infrastructure to support it. In January of 2021, I was working as a volunteer dispatcher for a small emergency relay station outside Fairbanks. It wasn't official 911, we handled overflow calls, emergency radio signals, satellite phone relays, things like that. Most nights were quiet. Maybe a snowmobile accident. Maybe a stranded trucker. That night should have been no different. It was around 2:17 a.m. when my console lit up with an incoming signal. No caller ID. No satellite trace. No registered device. Just a blinking red indicator labeled Emergency Voice Relay, Unknown Source. That alone was strange. Every signal had some origin. I answered anyway. Emergency relay. What's your situation? Static. Then breathing. Slow. Shallow. Like someone struggling not to cry. Hello? I repeated. A voice finally came through, female, young, maybe early 20s. I don't think I'm supposed to be here. Her signal cut in and out, distorted like it was passing through something old. Where are you? I asked. I don't know. I followed the lights. That sentence made my stomach tighten. What lights? They were all moving. Across the snow. I thought it was a truck. Her breathing quickened. But trucks don't stop out here. I pulled up the regional maps, satellite overlays, weather radar. There was nothing in the area she was describing. No roads. No stations. Just tundra and forest. Can you describe your surroundings? I asked. There was a long pause. Then she whispered, there are poles. Tall ones. No wires. Just poles. My skin prickled. There were poles like that, but they hadn't been used since the 1970s. Old experimental radio markers abandoned deep in the interior. No access roads. No power. No one should be there, I said carefully. Are you with anyone? No, she said. Then quieter. I was. But he told me to hide. I swallowed. Who told you to hide? Her voice trembled. The man who looks like my dad. I felt cold in a way that had nothing to do with Alaska. Is your dad with you? No, she said. He died when I was 12. Static crackled violently. Then she said something that made my blood turn to ice. He keeps calling my name, but his mouth doesn't move. I stood up from my chair. Listen to me, I said, trying to stay calm. I need you to stay on the line. Do not follow anyone. Do you see a building? A vehicle? I see, something tall, she whispered. A tower? No. A pause. It's shaped like a person. The breathing on the line changed. Slower. Deeper. Not hers. I pulled the headset away slightly. I said. Are you still there? Her voice came back, but flatter. Duller. He doesn't like that I'm talking to you. The signal spiked so hard it almost blew my speakers. Then another voice came through. Male. Older. Too calm. You shouldn't listen to her. I froze. This line is restricted, I said. Identify yourself. Silence. Then a soft chuckle. She's been cold a long time, the man said. Talking keeps her warm. I disconnected the call immediately and logged the incident. My hands were shaking. 5 seconds later. The line reconnected itself. Same unknown source. I didn't answer. The audio played anyway. It was wind now. Heavy wind. And footsteps crunching slowly through snow. Then her voice, barely audible. He found me. I slammed my fist on the console. If you can hear me, run toward the sound of the wind. Do you hear trees? No, she whispered. I hear breathing. Something wet hit the microphone. Then. A final sentence. I don't think I'm cold anymore. The line went dead. No signal drop. No disconnect tone. Just silence. I filed a full report. State troopers reviewed it. They found nothing. No missing persons matching her description. No satellite pings. No evidence of anyone out there. They told me it was probably interference. Atmospheric distortion. Sleep deprivation. I tried to believe them. Until 3 months later. I was reviewing archived emergency recordings when I noticed something. The audio timestamp from her call didn't match our system time. According to the file metadata, the call was recorded in 1986. 35 years before I answered it. And embedded deep in the background noise, almost impossible to hear unless you isolated it, was another voice. Mine. Repeating the same sentence over and over. Emergency relay. What's your situation? I quit the station the next day. And here's the part I've never told anyone. Last winter, during a snowstorm, my phone rang at 2:17 a.m. No caller ID. Just static. Then breathing. And a voice that sounded exactly like my own said, I don't think I'm supposed to be here. I didn't answer. I turned the phone off. But sometimes, when the wind is strong enough, I swear I can hear someone outside. Calling my name. In my father's voice. I grew up in Alaska, and if you haven't lived there, it's hard to explain just how empty it gets. Not quiet, empty. Like the world forgot to finish building itself. This happened in February 2016, outside a small village about 2 hours from Fairbanks. I was 23, home for winter break, staying with my uncle who lived off-grid. No neighbors. No cell service. Just trees, snow, and a dirt road that vanished under ice every winter. My uncle warned me about one thing before I arrived. Never follow tracks in the snow unless you know who made them. I laughed at the time. I wish I hadn't. My cousin Eli and I took the snowmobiles out late one afternoon. The sky was already dim even though it was only around 3:30 p.m. Winter days don't last long that far north. We planned to ride out to an old supply cabin near a frozen creek, maybe 6 miles from the house. A straight shot through forest trails we'd ridden 100 times. The cold was brutal, around -25 degrees Fahrenheit. Your breath froze inside your balaclava. The snow was packed hard and untouched in places, like nobody had been there in weeks. About halfway in, Eli slowed down. "Did you notice that?" he said over the engine noise. I followed his gaze. There were footprints crossing the trail. No snowmobile tracks. No sled marks. Just boots. Deep ones. Fresh. They came from the trees on one side, crossed the trail, and disappeared into the forest on the other. Out here, that wasn't normal. People didn't walk between villages in winter. You died doing that. "Probably a hunter," I said, even though my gut didn't agree. Eli didn't respond. We kept going. 2 miles later, we saw them again. Same footprints. Same size. Same spacing. Except this time, they didn't cross the trail. They joined it. The tracks came out of the trees and started following the snowmobile path behind us. I cut my engine. The forest fell silent. Too silent. "Someone's messing with us," Eli whispered. I shook my head. No one could keep up on foot. But when I stepped off my snowmobile and walked back 20 yards, the footprints were there. Fresh enough that loose snow still clung to the edges. They stopped exactly where we'd stopped. Then turned. And walked back into the woods. Like whoever it was had come close, looked, and changed their mind. We reached the supply cabin right before dark. It was a small wooden structure, half buried in snow, used years ago by trappers. We parked the snowmobiles and went inside to warm up. The cabin smelled like old wood and kerosene. That's when Eli noticed something. "There's already tracks here." We stepped back outside. There were boot prints circling the cabin. Slow loops. Like someone had walked around it multiple times. But there were no prints leading away. Only circling. And stopping right at the door. I felt cold crawl up my spine, and not from the weather. "Someone's inside," Eli said quietly. I pushed the door open again. Empty. But in the corner of the cabin, pressed into the frost on the wall, was a handprint. Bare. 5 fingers. Human. At -25 degrees Fahrenheit. We didn't stay. We rode back hard, engine screaming through the trees. Halfway home, Eli slowed again. "Please tell me you see that." I did. One set of footprints. Now walking parallel to the trail. Keeping pace. Never stepping on the trail itself. Always just inside the tree line. Every time we accelerated, the footprints widened, longer strides. When we slowed, they tightened. Matching us. Watching. I turned my headlamp toward the trees. Nothing. But the tracks kept appearing. When we reached the main road near the house, we stopped. The footprints ended. Right at the edge of the road. No turn. No retreat. Just stopped. As if whoever made them had stood there, watching us ride away. That night, we locked every door. Around 2:17 a.m., my uncle woke us up. "There's someone outside." We heard it too. Crunch. Crunch. Slow footsteps circling the house. Not running. Not sneaking. Just walking. Back and forth. For over an hour. No knocking. No talking. Just pacing. When morning came, we checked outside. No footprints near the house. None on the road. None in the trees. Except one set. Leading from the forest. Stopping directly beneath my bedroom window. Facing it. We reported it to state troopers. They found nothing. No signs of hypothermia victims. No missing persons. No tracks. But before I left Alaska, my uncle said something that stuck with me. "You know what's worse than something chasing you?" I shook my head. "Something that already knows where you live." I don't snowmobile at night anymore. And I never follow footprints in the snow. Because sometimes they're not trying to go somewhere. They're trying to see if you notice them.